Hello, welcome to the Shepherd Staff 2017 Finance Year-End Webinar. Hi, my name is Rod Kiles and I am the Customer Onboarding Specialist for Concordia Technology Solutions. I've been with the company a little bit over 17 years now, and I do really appreciate the opportunity to serve churches. You can reach me one of two ways. You could always shoot me an email at rod.kiles@cph.org, and if you'd like, you can give me a phone call at 314-268-1315. I kindly ask that you mute your phones and or microphones and type any questions that you have into the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. So those questions today are going to be answered by Jordan Bogart. You may have spoken to him in the past. He's one of our support technicians. He's been with the company several years, and he can answer any questions that you have along the way. You can reach him, of course, by email at jordan.bogart@cph.org, and you can always call him at the support line at 1-800-346-6120. So let's go to our overview slide, and let's talk about our class agenda. So every one of these sessions is broken up into little chunks, and ours is going to start out with the class overview, where we'll talk about the topics that we're going to cover during today's Shepherd Staff Finance Year-End webinar. From there, once we've discussed those topics, then of course we're going to show you how to complete those tasks in the order that they need to be completed. Then after that, we'll have a short review, and the review is just kind of cover some topics at a very high level to make sure that we've landed those points. Then we'll have a short quiz, and we'll have our question and answer session. So if there's any questions that you didn't get answered, you can definitely ask those questions at the end of the session. So let's go ahead and let's start with our overview. Let me move this over here. There we go. So we're going to start out with a year-end overview, basically talking about how the year-end should be done. Then from there, we're going to go in and show you, click, there we go. We're going to go in and show you how to do the optimize and rebuild. That does take a minute or two, but we're going to show you how to run that utility. And we're going to show you the new backup utility. So there'll be a slight change in how you back up, but the end results will be the same. From there, we'll go into the finance module, which will be the primary focus of today's session. And we'll show you how to add in budgets. We'll also show you the bank account reconciliation. We're not going to go through a full bank account reconciliation, but talk about it and show you how to access the utility. Then from there, we're going to go through a series of reports that you should definitely run before the end of the year, or run when you're doing the year end. And then from there, we'll show you the year-end utility. The finance module is the one module that has an actual year-end utility that you need to run, and we'll explain why you're going to need to run this utility. Then from there, we'll show you the cleanup utility, which is optional. Once we get done with the cleanup utility, we'll start wrapping up at that point in time. We'll have our review, we'll have our short 4-question quiz, and we'll have our question and answer session. So now, when it comes to this session here, go ahead. If you have questions along the way, of course, you can post those in the question box. They also wanted me to mention some of the other ways that you can reach out to gain support. Of course, you can email us at support@cts.cph.org. You can send us a tweet at Concordia Tech. If you're a Facebook user, you can always go to facebook.com/Concordia Technology, and then I guess tried and true, you can always give us a call at 1-800-346-6120. So year-end time is always a very exciting time. I hope you're excited as well. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the webcam so we can maximize our Shepherd Staff view, and I'm going to open up Shepherd Staff as well so you guys can see the task that we're going to show for this presentation. So give me just 1 second. There we go, and at this point in time, everybody should be able to see my Shepherd Staff login screen. And everybody who accesses the software should have their own login, especially when you have financials inside of your system, contributions and finances. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. You'll notice below my password that it says your CTS account is not registered. This is one thing that management wanted me to make sure to share with the audience. Excuse me, is that when you register your database, there's two benefits. So one of the main benefits is the ability to download upcoming releases of Shepherd Staff. Those could be feature packs, they could be the 8.5 version of the software, but registering your account allows you to do that. So I'm going to walk you through the registration part. I'm not going to update the version right now because the majority of customers are still on version 8.4. So I'm going to represent and show all of these features in version 8.4. But once you're registered, you can download the most recent versions of the software. Those are feature packs and new releases. We just did a video yesterday covering the introduction of Shepherd Staff 28, and that video is out on YouTube. So if you want to see how to upgrade to the most recent version, you can visit our YouTube channel. You can search for Concordia Technology Solutions, and that video is on that website. The second benefit of registering your database is the fact that you can use web tools. And what is web tools? Web tools gives you the ability to go to a web browser and enter your attendance and offering records. So, and we have a video out there about web tools as well. So your CTS account is not yet registered. I'll check that box. I'm going to click OK. And when I click OK, it's going to take me into the system settings. So you would have to be an administrator to be able to access these settings. From there, you can click on Get Key. And clicking on Get Key allows you to register your account. At that point, you'll type in your CPH account number, and you'll also type in your most recent invoice number. If you don't have that information, no worries. You can contact us at the 1-800-346-6120 number, and they will provide this information for you. So I'm on a demo database. I'm going to use kind of like a demo customer number, a fake customer number, and a fake invoice number here, so that I can activate the software. So once I type this information in, I'll click Continue. At that point, it'll contact the secure Microsoft Azure server, and it'll verify my information, verify the invoice number if everything's correct. At that point, it'll ask me if I want to sync my data to web tools. The reason for having to sync the data is for me to be able to enter attendance and enter offerings. I have to pass some information up to the secure server to be able to see the names and see the envelope numbers, and to be able to even log in. Password information has to be passed to the secure server. So then once you sync it, you can actually, give it just a second there, you can click on the little globe icon here, and then that will allow you to log in and enter in your attendance and offerings online. So then I could go to offerings and enter my offerings, and then go through the whole web tools process. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Once you're registered, then you'll be able to download the most recent version and use what we're calling the auto updater to actually update your software. So I'm just going to OK this. Now, now that we've gone through that initial process, let's talk about finance. So inside of here, across the top of your window, there's going to be membership, attendance, contributions, finance, scheduler, utilities, and exit. And we're going to go into the finance module. So I'm just going to click on finance. That'll take me into the finance module. When you first go into the finance module, you're going to have your desktop items, your church, get those where I want them. There we go. You're going to have your I want to, your church dashboard, your accounts tree, and then over on the right hand side your to-do list. So I'm going to go ahead and close those items out. The I want to is a shortcut to commonly access tasks within the software. The church dashboard is a snapshot of statistics for the financial module or whichever module you're in there. And I'm going to leave the accounts tree open. The accounts tree basically shows you a tree version of your chart of accounts, and then if you have the panel expanded, it'll show you church statistics, financial statistics for each one of those accounts, or major groups or minor groups depending on where you're at inside of the software. So I'm going to just collapse the tree, not minimize it, but collapse the tree. Then on the right-hand side, there's the to-do list, and that's a list of church tasks that are set up by your administrator. Okay, so when running the year end, there is an order to completing that process. So when talking about that order, the first thing you're going to want to do is back up. And let me actually close the finance module. Backing up is one component of it. There's also running the year end, then there's running the task for the module that you're in. So when you're going through this process of the year end, you know, backing up just in case something goes awry, running the database rebuild to check your database for problems and compress your database. And usually I like to actually run the database rebuild first before I actually run the database backup because of its ability to compress the database. So to access this utility, you'll go to Utilities, you'll go to Rebuild and Optimize your database. I'm going to say yes, and that's going to start the utility running. Whenever you run this utility, you do want to run the utility from the server machine. So if you're on a network, running it from the server machine will give you access to the database. It's a little bit more reliable. Shepherd Staff should always be run on a wired network. It's not really designed for wireless, but being on a wired network, still it's more stable if you're running the rebuild from the server machine. When you run the database rebuild, it only has to be run on one of the machines when you're in a networking situation. The reason being is you're running this utility on a machine, but you're really running the utility on the database. When you run that utility, it'll check the database for problems like it's doing right now. You can see that down here at the bottom of your window. It will reorganize your database and it will improve the performance through this reorganization. So it's very similar to running a defrag on your PC. When you run that defrag utility, it compresses everything, it reorganizes the files, and in doing so, it speeds up the processing of your computer because you don't have to search as much for a file. So that's what the database rebuild does. When you run the database rebuild and it completes, you're good to go on to your next step. If you run into an error message, please give us a call. We can work with you to resolve that error message. If you don't have any error messages, now on to backing up. So next we'll go to Utilities and go to Database Backup and Restore. And you'll notice with the backup utility, backup and restore utility, a couple things. The utility definitely does look different. I'm on version 8.4 with Feature Pack 2D. You'll notice that down at the bottom of the window. And over the years, we've had requests for enhancing the backup utility. So we've done that. We've gone in and basically made it more reliable, and we've added in features like the ability to back up to anywhere on your network now. In the past, you always had to back up to the root of a drive. It could have been a flash drive, it could have been a hard drive, could have been a network drive, could have been backing up the CD. But with all of those scenarios, it had to be the root. So now you can actually select the location after clicking the Start Backup button. So if you wanted to back up to your desktop, you could do that, or if you wanted to back up to a folder on a server, you can do that now. Whenever the backup completes, it'll verify that the backup has completed successfully. So now it actually has that double check and that verification process. Before it would say successfully, but that just meant that the utility completed. Now it actually double checks to make sure that everything's 100% right there. So so at this point, you can back up to a location you choose. You can also use the last location you choose, or you can say one of any of your previous locations. So at the lower part of the window, it does say current database. So that's to let you know, hey, this is the database you're backing up. If you're a multiple database user, you have a database for your church, a database for your school, and a database for removed people, or something along those lines, you'll know which one you're backing up. Whenever you back up, it does keep track of the database ID now. So when you restore, we know whether or not you're restoring the correct database, and you're not restoring over the top of your school database when you're really trying to restore over the top of your church database. So when we're verifying that, it does tell you the amount of space needed in either bytes or megabytes. So I think most of us think about it in megabytes, 16.4 megabytes. And then from there, it's going to show the space available if it can calculate that. So now below that, there is a flag for checking out finance. So flag finance is being checked out. Whenever you back up, it does back up everything. So you know, checking this flag isn't necessary whenever you're just doing a regular backup. The only time you want to use this flag is when you're backing up and taking finance home to work on it. So if you're going to work on the finance module at a different location, then you can check finance out and flag the module as being checked out. That means that anybody that goes into Shepherd staff, they will be able to see a bright red background and a message letting them know that, hey, any changes you make now will be wiped out when the person who is working on finance brings the data back and restores it. So in dealing with this, in most cases, you're not going to have to check that box for flagging it that finance has been checked out. So now let's go ahead and back up. So backup database, we're going to say start backup, and it's going to ask me to select a location. I'm going to go to my network drive, and you'll notice that it has this big long number now, and you'll also notice that the file extension now says CTS. In the past, the file extension was .001. And then from the 2 right here, that is the date and time of the backup. So today's December 13th of 2017, and we are backing up at 10:17 and 39 seconds a.m. So once we get that, we can, once we verify that, we can say, hey, this is our location. We can click save, and it will start the backup process. And it usually just takes a few seconds. It makes a copy of the database, it zips that data up and compresses it and puts it in the location that you chose. Now, when you do a backup, it does not back up your photos or your attachments. There's a separate backup utility in 8.5 for that data, for that information. So if you're backing up, you want to back up your photos, please upgrade to 8.5, where at that point in time you'll be able to back up your photos. Okay, so I'll click OK here. We've now backed up our data. We've rebuilt the database. We've backed up. Let's go into the finance module, which we did just a minute ago. And I'm going to close the I want to, close the church dashboard, and close the to-do list. And I'm just going to run my mouse over the top of the reminder finger there to turn that off. So once we're inside the software, there's several things that we're going to do. Once we're inside the finance module, there's several things that we're going to want to do. And entering in budgets for 2018 is one of those items. So to create your budgets, you'll go into the account that you want to create the budgets for, and you'll actually enter in the budget. So to do that, one thing we know that you can only create budgets on income and expense accounts. What you can do is you can go to the accounts grid by clicking on the A here at the top, and that'll bring up your accounts grid. Then from there you can scroll down and select an income account, and then you can click on budget down here at the lower right of your screen. That's one way of doing it. You can also complete this task inside of the accounts tree. So we have our income and expense accounts here. Let me scroll up just a little bit. And if I click on, let me close that. Let me turn one click off here just a second. And if I click on the account, then down here at the bottom, there's going to be an option to display the budget for the selected accounts. And that will do the exact same thing as, let me cancel that and close this ledger window, as going into the accounts grid and clicking the budget button here on the right-hand side. So whichever one you prefer, a lot of people are becoming very familiar with the tree here. So you may want to click on the account and click on the budget button down here at the bottom to display your budgets, or you may want to use the accounts grid to display your budget. Either way will work. Once the budget window is up, you'll notice how it says fiscal year 2017. You'll need to add the budget for 2018. So we're in the general fund right now. The budget last year was $253,000. So far this year we brought in $239,000. So we can add a new budget. Click on Add. And then it's going to say adding budget for fiscal year 2018. That's what we want to do. So we'll click OK. That'll put 2018 into our fiscal year box here on the left-hand side. And it'll allow us to enter our budget into the system. At that point, if we want to, what we can do is type in the budgeted amount. So it could be $22,000 for January, 21,500 for February. March could be 23,000, and I don't know which month Easter happens in this upcoming year yet, but say that it is 28,000 for April. And you could literally type in each budget month, and they could vary month to month. Now that's one way of entering in your budgets. Most people use the project and copy feature. So you can go to project and copy down here. From there, the majority of customers will say equal monthly amounts. You do have the option to base your budget on last year's actuals. You can project from past actuals. Both of these are calculations. You can copy last year's budget, and you can also copy last year's actuals, whichever one you prefer to do. Most people use equal monthly amounts. So then at that point, let's say it's 254,000, then we can click OK. Then that will take the amount that we typed in and divide it equally amongst the 12 months. Then at that point, we can either use the directional arrows to go over to the next account. It'll ask us if we want to save. Of course we do. We want to say yes. And then we could project and copy our next budget if we wanted to. So we could say project and copy. And then, I mean, if we wanted to, we could base on last year's actuals and type in the actual amount, or just project and say include actuals through and then do a projection. And it'll say, hey, this is what we project it's going to be based on these percentages. Then OK. And it will insert those amounts. So that's a little more complicated than just having a number and dividing it by 12, but it really comes down to the church and how they want to handle those situations. So, and then you could go to the next month. So that's literally the most popular next account, not next month. That's literally the most popular way is people project basically dividing the budget by 12. There's another way to enter the budgets into the system besides manually typing them in, and that is importing your budgets. So I'm going to click OK here, and I'm going to close our accounts grid for a second. And then I'm going to go up to accounts and go to budget import. Now, inside of budget import, of course, we're going to recommend that you back up your system first, just in case something goes awry. So we'll say yes, we did complete that task. Then we're going to load our spreadsheet. So here at the upper right, it does give additional information about how this utility works. Spreadsheet should be in Microsoft Excel format. Once loaded, you can freely edit the spreadsheet or even add new rows. Any changes you make are saved to the underlying spreadsheet. And usually I suggest people follow this information that's in parentheses. You can create a spreadsheet from the budget worksheet report. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and go to the budget worksheet report. So I'm going to go to reports, budget worksheet, double click, and then from there usually I just click reset and then I export the information to Excel. So when it opens up in Excel, I have all the information that I need to actually create the budgets. So I have budgets this year, I have year-to-date actuals, year-end projections, and I can actually just type in the budget that I'm going to use in 2018. I can put that in the next year's column. So to right size all of my columns, I'll click on the little triangle between A and 1 here, then I'll double click between B and C, and then that will right size all of my columns. Then from there I can literally type in each one of the budgets. And this is for equal monthly amounts. If I want to do different monthly amounts, I can actually create a spreadsheet, and I'll need to create 12 columns, one for each month. So this would actually be January, then the next column would be February, the next column would be March. But I'm going to do equal monthly amounts. So for general fund, I'm going to say 255,000. There we go. Down arrow. Mission fund 1,700. Youth fund 2225. And basically, I would just type all of my budgets into the system at that point. And I'm just going to add a few income budgets, then I'm going to go down to expense and type in a few expense budgets. So we're going to say it's $200,000 for salary, and then for retirement plan, $3,750, health insurance, $3,650, and we'll do $6,650 for housing. Okay. Once I've typed in all of my budgets, I'll go to File, and I'll go to Save As, and I'm going to save this in my P drive as well. So here we go, and I'm going to call this one Budgets 2018. And when I save it, I want to save it as an XLS 95 file. So that's the one that's used. So save, and then once it's saved, I can simply close this window and go back into accounts, and then go into budget import, say yes, I can close this window behind it, and then I can load my budget, and I'm going to select my P drive, and I'm going to do Budgets 2018, and click Open. It's going to pull that budget worksheet into my window here. If I needed to make changes, I could make changes at that point in time. At that point, I can say Layout, and I can say, hey, I want to do lump sum, and then it'll just look at this column. If it's not lump sum and I'm doing 12 months, you'll notice how it highlights all these columns. It's expecting January, February, March information in those columns. From there, I'll say fiscal year, and we're going to do 2018. It's going to say here at the top, do not override existing budgets. So the budget isn't anything but 0. It's going to leave that budget alone and just skip to the next budget. But once I've reviewed all my settings, I'll say import budgets, answer yes to the question, and it will import my budget. So then I'll click OK and close this window. Now I can go back into my accounts grid. So I'll click on A, select the general fund, and I can click on budgets, and I'll be able to see the budget for 2018. So 2018 was 254,000, then we had 1,700, then we had 2225, and all those budgets will be in the system at this point. So that's how you can use the budget import. Once we've imported our budgets, the next thing to do is to make sure we've reconciled all of our transactions. And the reason why we really want that to be the next step, because after that we're going to print our year-end report. So we're going to go through and print our balance sheet, our general ledger report, our statement of income and expense. You may want to print a trial balance report, so that could be an account balances report. And some churches print a dedicated accounts report, but running the bank account reconciliation is going to make sure that all of our transactions are right inside the system. So we're comparing what we have in our system versus what cleared the bank. So at this point, you can go to accounts and you can go to bank account reconciliation. Inside bank account reconciliation, you'll select the appropriate bank. You'll go through and select the start date, or enter the start date and the end date for your from your bank statement, and then you'll enter your starting balance and beginning balance. So for example, say we were reconciling from 10/1/2017 through 10/30. Second time's the charm here. 2017 through, actually let's do 10/31/2017. And then you could type in the dollar amounts. All this information is going to be present on your bank statement. So you'll use those exact numbers, 10,000, and say this is 12,000. Then from there you'll say transactions to clear. You'll go through and you'll select the transactions that are on your bank statement. As you select those transactions, your difference over here on the right hand side will approach 0. So, and once it gets to 0, you've actually completed the process. You will notice that there's 2 lines down here. There's on statement and in finance. On statement represents what's taking place on your bank statement. So you'll have beginning balance, checks, deposits, journal entries, and ending balance. Then there's the difference, and in finance is going to be what's actually inside the finance module. So this is your current balance, and then these are all of your outstanding checks, deposits, and journal entries, and this is the ending balance if you applied all of those transactions. So once you're done, once you get your difference down to 0, you'll post your bank account reconciliation, print out your report, and add that to your filing system there. So I'm going to close this. That's doing a bank account reconciliation in a nutshell. So I'm going to say no. Once the bank account reconciliation is complete, next we're actually going to print out our report. So we've done a verification. Our checks, deposits, and journal entries look good. We're going to go to reports, and since we were just talking about checks, deposits, and journal entries, let's look at the general ledger report. The general ledger report shows the transactions inside of your system, and it can be done for one account, but it can also be done for all of your accounts. So inside of here, what you can do is you can select your date range. You can then go in and either summarize checks and deposits or detail checks and deposits. This is the end of the year, so we're going to detail. We can include accounts with no transactions, include inactive accounts, sort transactions by date only. I'm actually going to not select that option so that it sorts check, deposit, and then it sorts by date. I am going to include memo and line descriptions, and I'm going to use a year-to-date running balance, and I'm going to exclude color so that I save on ink. Then at that point, I'm going to go from account range to individual accounts. Account range, basically you'll select the parts of accounts, the part of the accounts that represents the accounts that you want to see. With individual accounts, you're actually selecting the accounts that you want to see. So account range is a little harder to use because you have to go in and, like, say account type and go to pick and choose and then select the account types that you want to see. And this would be all of the bank accounts. With individual accounts, you can go in here and say, hey, I just want to see, let me scroll down to Central Trust. These are in alphabetical order. So at this point, you can say Central Trust checking, Central Trust savings, and then farmers, there we go, and money market. And I could say, hey, these are the accounts that I want to see on my report. Once I've done that, then I can click preview. When the preview comes up, there we go. Then at that point, I can review all the transactions, look at the starting balance, navigate to the page that has the ending balance. There we go. And then that would show the ending balance. And if I felt comfortable with the report, then at that point, I'd click on print, and I would print out the report. So that's how I could print that report. So then I can close that. Once I have all my transactions printed out, I may want to use a trial balance report. So I'm going to close the general ledger report. I'm going to go to the account balances report here. Then at that point, I'll select the fund that I want. Say as of what date, which is going to be the end of the year. You'll notice on this report that it doesn't have any date selectors. It just has the months. If you don't have a date selector, either there'll be an option to look at a prior year, or there basically won't be an option to look at the prior year. And in situations where there's not dates on the report will look at the finance year down here at the lower right. So you see how it says 2017. I click on that and it gives me this date range. This report is going to run for this date range. So basically, if I say as of December, it's looking December of 2017. So I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to do debits and credits. That's going to be my trial balance report, comparing debits versus credits for my accounts. I could say show monthly totals if I wanted to. At that point, I can say save month with report if I'm saving this, and I can include inactive accounts. Once I get to this point, I'll preview the report, and it'll show me each one of my accounts, show me my credits versus debits, show me my year-to-date change, and I can print that report out at that point in time. So I'm going to go ahead and close the account balances report. And once that's closed, the preview is, and then the report is. The next report to take a look at is going to be the balance sheet report. The balance sheet report will compare your assets versus your liabilities, and it will include equity accounts if you have equity accounts in the system. The system doesn't require that you use equity accounts, but some churches do. If you are using equity accounts and you're using that to balance your accounting equation, and if you need to transfer the difference between your income and expense over into your equity account, you're going to want to do that before you run the year end. And I would urge you to do that before you run the year end. Not that you can't open up a prior fiscal year and do that transaction. It'll just save you some frustration and maybe a phone call if you go ahead and transfer that at the end of the year before you run the year-end utility. The year-end utility will take your ending balances and make them your beginning balances for your assets, liability, and, equity, and dedicated accounts. Assets, liabilities, equity, and dedicated accounts. So that's the main key of running the year-end utility. It does that. So if you close out the year and then don't do that transaction, it's not done automatically, then the equity account won't be affected. So just a note for that percentage of people who use equity accounts. So here inside the balance sheet, you'll select the appropriate format. In most cases, people will just print current year at this point in time. They'll say that they'll run the report for December. Instead of major group, you're going to want to use account level so that you'll be able to see all of your assets, liability, and equity accounts. You'll select either portrait or landscape, and you'll select what type of captions you want to see on the report. And it may be name, numbers, and full account numbers, since this is the last balance sheet of the year. From there, you can select all your funds or one of your funds. You can consolidate if you have more than one fund. Save your month with the report, include inactive accounts, and say no color. So I said no color on the other one, so I'm going to include color on this one. Then at that point, you can preview, and it will preview all of your accounts, grouping them together by their account type. So all the assets will show first, your liabilities will show next, then your equity will appear. At the end of the report, there will be totals. So total fund balance, assets minus liability, total fund balance, assets minus liability less equity, and then total liability and fund balance. So basically, you can print this report out and add it to the reports that you're storing away. So let me go back and mention one thing. Also on this report, for those churches that use dedicated accounts, there will be the accounts payable and accounts receivable. I don't have any dedicated accounts inside my system, but you can have accounts payable and accounts receivable on this report as well if you're using dedicated accounts. Dedicated accounts track the money that's being held for a specific purpose, and then those items will either show up as liabilities or assets, depending on if they're positive or negative. So, okay, so I'm going to close that. That's the balance sheet report. After the balance sheet report, we're going to take a look at the statement of income and expense. Here we go. And the statement of income and expense compares the amount of money brought in by the church versus the amount of money that is spent. So with the money that comes in, usually that's going to be through the plate, but there could also be bank interest and rental property that brings money in as well. And I said bank interest, but it could be interest on other accounts as well. And then expenses is going to be the different ways that the church spends the money: salaries, utilities, mission trips, whatever you're spending the money on, that's going to be in your expenses. Basically, you're going to compare the two and see how well you did throughout the year. Also see how well you did compared to the budgets that you've run over the year, the budgets that you entered into the system and how you did over the year. So at this point, there's going to be selecting your fund, the general fund. If you have more than one fund, you can consolidate. You can filter the report by a responsibility code. So if certain people are responsible for certain accounts, you can filter this report by those responsibilities. This is the year end, so we're probably not doing any filtering at this point. We really want everything. We're going to select the end of the year, December. We can save the month with report and include inactive accounts. Below there, there's going to be formats, and there's numerous formats inside of this view. The two most popular are the Treasurer's Report and the current month year-to-date budget remaining report. Now, below there, earlier we just created our budgets. You may want to run the all months budget report if you need to print out a budget report to show everybody all the budgets. It'll give you the option of current year, prior year, 2 years ago, and next year. So if you needed a report to show all the budgets, you could use this report. Let's show the Treasurer's Report. The Treasurer's Report allows you to see almost like the bare minimal information and still it be a statement of income and expense. So I'm going to go to level of detail and say account, and we're going to say names only. Then from there you can say what type of budget format you want to show, year-to-date or annual. This is the end of the year, so we're going to show annual. Your percentage of budget or budget remaining, and then you can say how you want to sort this. I'm going to sort by name since I'm only showing the account name. If I was, level of detail, I'm going to sort by name since I'm only showing name only. If I'm showing full numbers, I may want to sort by numbers, but I don't want to have some type of conflict and cause confusion at that point. So then from there, I'm going to preview, and when I preview my report, I'll see December actuals, year-to-date actuals, our annual budget, and our budget remaining. And then at that point, we can see if money was not brought in or we didn't bring in as much money as we had hoped in the case of income, or if we had spent more than we expected, like we spent $373 more. Oh, I'm sorry. We spent $124 more on the newspaper than we should have. So this is our annual budget of $1139. Actually, I'm going to have to reverse that one more time. I was right when I said the advertising income. So our budget was $987. We spent $1,360.47. So we overspent by $373. So any of the negatives is going to mean that we either spent or brought in more than we expected. When we go to the last page of the report, that's going to do a comparison. It's going to show us our total expenses, but then it's going to do a comparison between our income and expenses. And then we can kind of see how we're doing overall, so income less expense. So I'm going to go ahead and close this report. The Treasurer's Report really is becoming the most popular. There is the current month year-to-date budget remaining report, and with that report, it gives you a month option and an annual option. So here on the left, we're seeing current month, and here on the right, we're seeing our annual budget. So you can kind of see how your month is going, but on the right-hand side, you can see overall how you're doing. And this report's pretty popular as well. Okay, wonderful. So that is our statement of income and expense. The only other report that I wanted to print out, wanted to preview and show, is the dedicated accounts report. So to access this, it's one of our reports here inside of our reports list. I'll go to dedicated reports. The dedicated accounts report is going to show all of your dedicated accounts. My system doesn't have any dedicated accounts, but there's a lot of churches that use them, and basically it's the money that's being reserved for a specific purpose. Let me add a single dedicated account real quick so that we can preview that report. So I'm going to go to add here in the accounts grid, say dedicated, click OK, and we're going to do the building fund. And I'm just going to put an initial balance of $10,000 in there. And click OK and answer yes to that question. Then in my dedicated accounts report, account level, orientation is portrait, no responsibilities. I'm going to say include inactive accounts. This is the end of the year. Then click preview. Now when this report comes up, it's showing that money reserved for a specific purpose. It'll show you a beginning balance. Then once again, this is a report that shows you current month versus year to date. So you can see current receipts, money that's being brought in, versus expenses, money that's being spent. And then you can see how you did year to date and your current balance. So it's another way to look into your data and get a clearer picture. So if these accounts are going up or going down, and lots of times you can compare this with your statement of income and expense versus your balance sheet report. Okay, so that is the dedicated accounts report, and that report shows money reserved for specific purposes. Once we've printed all these reports or reviewed all these reports, we definitely want to make sure the numbers look accurate and look correct. That's really the reason why we go through all these reports, because we're going to be closing out the year, and if all the numbers look correct on the reports, then we can feel confident that our ending balances are correct, therefore our beginning balances are going to be correct inside of Shepherd staff starting in 2018. So we've already backed up. We may want to back up one more time before actually running the year-end utility, especially if we made any new transactions or any changes. Because if we have to restore, it's simply going to take us back to the point that we ran the year-end and we closed it out. We're going to go back to the point that we made that backup. So to run the year-end utility, I'm going to close this. We're going to go to utilities. We're going to go to year-end. And the year-end utility basically, and I'm going to say no here just for a second. The year-end utility, I'm going to go to accounts. It is going to basically take this balance 187,354.82, and it's going to make that the beginning balance in 2018. So basically for our assets, liabilities, our equity, and our dedicated account down here at the bottom, it's going to take those ending balances and make them the beginning balance. Now when it comes to our expense accounts and our income accounts, those accounts are actually zeroed out at the end of the year, and then they'll start gaining value at the first of the year as you create transactions. So every single year when you run the year-end utility, it zeroes out your income and expense accounts. So let me close this, and I'm going to go to utilities and year-end, and it's going to ask us if we backed up. We have. We'll say yes. Then inside this window, it's going to say close the current fiscal year and open the new fiscal year. It does lock the prior fiscal year, so you won't be able to go back and enter transactions in 2017 unless you physically go in and reopen these books. So most cases, once it's locked, it's locked. If you need to reopen it, give us a call at the support line and we can walk you through that process. You can enter transactions into a future fiscal year. So if I haven't closed out 2017 yet and we're in 2018 and I need to do payroll, feel free to go ahead and do payroll. Every transaction is date and time stamped. So if you enter those transactions for whatever Friday that is in the first Friday in 2018, those transactions will be applied to 2018. They won't be applied to 2017. So if you need to do that, please do so. So then we'll say close the current fiscal year and open the new one. We'll verify our dates. All those look correct. And then it'll give us a note about the cleanup utility, which we'll talk about here in just a second. So we'll click begin. Before running the year-end utility, please make certain that there are no other users in the finance module. Then click OK to continue with the year-end. So we'll click OK. It goes through literally just that quickly. Then once we do that, we'll click close. Then if we went back into accounts, and I'm going to go to the bank account here at the top, Central Trust Checking. Click on that account, and if I click on edit, actually cancel that. If I click on actuals, then you'll notice how fiscal years we have 2017. This is the beginning balance for 2017, and if we go to 2018, this is the beginning balance for 2018. So it did roll our balances forward correctly, and we can actually see those numbers now. So everything looks correct. That's the number we expected to see, so we're good to go. And once you run it, you would just review these numbers. They do look correct, so we're good to go. Okay, so that's running the year-end utility. Next, let's take a look at the cleanup utility. And we get questions about the cleanup utility all the time. The cleanup utility allows you to purge data from the system. Each module has a cleanup utility. You can go to utilities and go to cleanup. It's highly recommended that you back up before you run this utility, and we actually try to urge people not to run the cleanup utility if they can get around, running it. The reason being is if you delete the data, it severs the data, and you can't go back and print the analytical reports that you want. You can't print the comparison reports that you want because you've deleted the data. So think about it long and hard before you delete the data. So we'll say yes. Then at that point you can go through and select the items that you want to delete if you wanted to get rid of transactions. If you wanted to try to get rid of inactive accounts, you can mark accounts as inactive. It'll hide those accounts from all your views. And lots of times the reason why people want to delete data is to get rid of those inactive accounts. We just suggest marking them as inactive and hiding them. There's not a good reason to delete checks, actuals, summaries, purchase orders, and recurrent transactions just to delete accounts if you can hide them from your reports and hide them for your views. So once you've selected the ones you want to delete, click begin, and it'll literally wipe that information out. The limitations fall into how many years you have to go back. The system will make you keep some data inside the system. So it's not going to allow you to wipe all the way up to 1/1/2018. It's going to make you hold on to certain pieces of data. So I'm going to cancel that. I don't want to delete anything. And once you've completed the cleanup, if you needed to do so, you're done with the year end. So one thing to note that I didn't have in my notes that popped in my head when I saw this reminder finger is the recurrent transactions. So I would add that onto the list, that you may want to review your recurrent transactions at the end of the year as well. So if you have some that are going to end, you may need to copy them and create a new one. If there's going to be ones that you're not going to use in the upcoming year, you may just want to end those ones and delete them. So recurrent transactions, that would be like my last little note on this process. So let's switch back to our PowerPoint presentation, and let's go through our review. So with the review, you're going to want to perform the year end in this order. So it goes contributions, attendance, membership. Then you can actually run the scheduler and the finance module at any point in time. So they are independent, and it's due to the way that the database is set up. So membership, attendance, and contributions, all that information is intermingled and tied together. The scheduler and finance, they're almost little separate modules on their own, even though you access them through Shepherd Staff. So just remember that order when you're running the year end. Also, remember these basic steps. You're going to want to update and enter all of your data prior to running any year-end utilities. So you're going to make sure your data is up to date. This is the best time of the year to make sure that we've completed those tasks. This will include entering transactions and budgets for entering transactions for 2017 and entering budgets for 2018. You're going to want to run any needed reports. And these are going to include the balance sheet, statement of income and expense, and the general ledger report. And there may be some other reports there that you like to keep as well. Then from there, we want to consider the year-end workflow. So at the start of this process, please make a new backup before completing each module's year-end task. This will give you a fallback point to go to if something is incorrect after running the year end. So if something goes awry or we make a mistake, the only way to fix it is either to manually go in and make changes or to restore backup. And if you have that backup, that will allow you to just go to that backup. So once we've created that backup, we're going to complete the year-end task for each specific module, then check your data afterwards to verify any changes you made. So we'll definitely want to do that, complete the task and verify those changes. Then when we're done, we're going to make another backup when all year-end tasks are complete. So let's go ahead and go through our quiz. So at the end of these sessions, we like to have a little short quiz to kind of double check our knowledge and possibly tie up loose ends. So we're going to start out with a true or false question. And everybody should be able to see the question on their screen. Here we go. And I'm going to read the question out loud. True or false? You can enter transaction into Shepherd Staff for 2018 even if you have not closed out 2017. Okay, looks like 84% of the people have voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. 89% have voted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So we had 100% say true, so we were unanimous. Perfect. So I'm going to hide the poll and share the answer. So the answer is true. Since all transactions have a date, you can enter transactions for next year prior to closing out this year's books. Good job, everyone. True or false? Let me share the next poll. There we go. True or false? You cannot reopen a closed finance or fiscal year. Okay, it looks like everybody has voted. I will close the poll and share the results. We had a split decision. We had 25% say true and 75% say false. Let me hide the results and share the answer. I said the answer was false. You can open a closed finance year. To do so, go to the main screen of Shepherd Staff, click Utilities, click Settings, click Contributions Finance tab, and change the finance year start date back to the start date of, when I created this slide it was 2016, but this year you'd say 2017. Note, if you make changes, you will need to run the year end again please back up prior to making any changes. So you can open a prior fiscal year or finance year. I guess the question is whether or not you should. That would be up to your church, I guess, on whether or not you should. Some churches, they won't open up the prior finance year. What they'll do is they'll enter in a journal entry. But you guys out there in the field will make those decisions. Okay, true or false? Question number 3. There we go. Okay, true or false? The cleanup utility should be run every single year as part of your year-end process. Okay, it looks like everybody has voted. I will close the poll and share the results. We had 35% say true and 65% say false. Another split decision there. So I'll hide the results and share the answer. And the answer is false. We advise against running the cleanup utility. This utility deletes data from Shepherd staff, making it difficult to run long-term trending and analytical report. So it's definitely a decision you can make inside the office if you want to delete that old data. It does make it difficult to run reports over multiple years if you purge out that old data. It's just not possible. So, okay, question number 4, our 4th and final quiz question, is going to be true or false as well. There we go, and it just launched. So true or false, if you select the option to check out finance when making a backup, only finance information is backed up. Okay, give it just a few more seconds here. Okay, and it looks like everybody, oh, there we go. It looks like everybody has voted. So I'm going to close the poll and share the results. We almost had a 50-50 split there. It was really close. It was 47-53. So we'll hide the poll and share the results. The answer is false. This is a really good question. People get confused by it sometimes, but the checkout finance feature will cause a message to be displayed when a user opens finance, indicating that the finance has been checked out and any changes that are made will be lost when finance is restored. The backup utility always backs up everything inside the database. So rest assured, if your finance person backs up the data, they back up everything. If your secretary backs up the data, they back up everything. So everything is always backed up when you back up, except for the photos and attachments. That's a separate backup utility. But when you think about it in general, everything's backed up when you back up. Okay. Oh, do you have any questions? If you do, you can definitely post those questions in the question box. We'll love to hear from you. Before people start dropping off, it happens real quickly. I do want to thank everybody for attending today's Shepherd Staff webinar. I truly hope you enjoyed the session. If you have any questions after the question and answer session here at the end, you can definitely give us a call at 1-800-346-6120, and you can shoot us an email at support@cts.cph.org. Oh, we got a question. Hello, Sandy. Thanks for posting your question. The question is, and I'll read it to the audience here, how do I export financial reports to Excel when I do the columns do not line up over the page? That's a really good question. Depending on the report, they may not line up. This is probably one of those questions that we need you to send in some of the examples of the reports that don't line up, and then we can talk to the programming team and have them take a look at those reports. Some of the reports do have an export to Excel option on those reports, and that helps those reports be in the right format when you export them to Excel. But if you send this over, if you send that over to us, like which reports you're kind of having problems with, let us know, and we can definitely look into those reports and see if there's a way to get it exported out, or see if we can have the programmers take a look at that and possibly make a change for you. So it really just depends on the scenario. But send it through and we can see what we can do. You're welcome. Thanks, Sandy. The next question comes in from Sherry. Hello, Sherry. Sherry says, would you tell me again where to get the documentation for the year end? So on the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a little control panel that has an orange button at the top, a little arrow. And inside of there should be a section that says handouts. And there should be a handout in there. Let me take a look at mine here. And the handout says Shepherd Staff Year-End Process Training Document. And then, like, if I click on that, it'll download it and preview it. And then your document will look like this. And actually, that one has the old branding on it. Let me transfer over. I just added the new one to the download window. The new one, they're actually the exact same information, but as you can tell, they just have different branding on them. So I just added the new one with the new branding on it. Okay. Sherry, if you can't download it, just post that in the question box, and I will email that file over to you at the end of the session. Okay. Next question is from Louise. Hello, Louise. I am new to Shepherd Staff and have not begun using it. Would you advise starting January 1 or backdating a few months of 2017 and double entering information in both our current software as well as Shepherd Staff? That's a really good question. That's a really good question. Let's see, this is December 13th. If you are starting today, I would backdate 30 days. So maybe 30 days, maybe a month and a half, and then that way you can compare reports between the two software and get more comfortable. And then when you hit January 1, you're actually ready to use the software. So yes, I would suggest backdating. You would just need to use the correct beginning balances for, like, if you're going to start at the 1st of December, you'd have to use the beginning balances as of December 1st. But lots of churches go through that exercise that you're talking about. So I would say yes, I agree with that. Okay. Wonderful. Well, if there aren't any other questions, oh wait, I do have another question. Another question came in from Louise. Hello, Louise, once again. Also, our church is switching fiscal years from January to December to July through June. Can I change the fiscal year in Shepherd Staff to match our church? Yes, you can. Basically, the way that it works is, I was just looking back at your dates there. So if you're running January through December, you would start with a January through December fiscal year. And you would continue with that January through December fiscal year until July 1st, where you'll run a year end. And you may have noticed when I ran the year end, I kind of skipped over this part of it. So if I go to utilities year end, I'm going to say yes. Please don't run the year end twice back to back. But when you run the year end, you'll notice how there's one box that is white, and it allows for data entry. That box, and this actually 100% represents your scenario. So basically, your fiscal year would say 1/1. Sorry about that. So your fiscal year would say 1/1/2018 to 12/31/2018. When you ran your year end, you would change this date to January 1, 2018, and just click over here in this gray area, and that will switch the end date. So literally, this is the exact step you're going to do come January 1, is you're going to change the new fiscal year from 1/1/2019 to 7/1/2018, and then that will, when you run this utility, it'll create that new fiscal year. It'll transfer over your, it'll create your beginning balances from the ending balances. Everything will work perfect. You'll just make sure to back up. So awesome. Thanks, Louise. The next question is from Sherry. Hello, Sherry. 2017 ends on a Sunday. One contribution we make is based on our monthly offerings. Do I have to stay on Sunday to write that check so it goes in the correct fiscal year? That's a really good question. No, you do not. Whenever you create your checks or print your checks, you can select, like if I go into the check register, if it's a pending check, I won't put a date in here, but when I go to print my checks, I'm just going to cancel that. Then close check printer. When I go to print my checks, I don't have any checks in here. Let me double back one more time. So if I go into my check register, I add a check, select the payee, trash service, okay. When I go to print my checks, check printer, and I can select the appropriate date. So if it was 12, if it was the prior, if it was 12/31, I could write that check for 12/31. So it'll work out perfectly. Okay. Oh, thanks again, Louise. I really appreciate it. So there we go. And then it'll include that date on the check. So you won't have to stay late or anything like that. Okay. Well, it looks like people are beginning to drop off the webinar, so I think we've gotten to the end here. If you do run into any other questions, please feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear from you. If not, if we don't talk before the end of the year, I hope everybody has a wonderful Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. So, okay. Wonderful. Okay, so, oh, there's another question. Here we go. Oh, great question. So I'm going to say Jerry Lynn. Hello, Jerry Lynn. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. How do we submit feature requests for Shepherd staff? So if you want to submit a feature request, that can be done by going to support@cts.cph.org, going to send in an email to support@cts.cph.org. They take all of the feedback and suggestions. We make sure to log that, and that's how we decide to make whatever changes we make to the software. So earlier I was talking about the backup feature and how we made all those changes. It was due to customers like yourself submitting in feedback and saying that, hey, it'd be nice if you guys did XYZ, and that's what we did. So feel free to shoot us an email. You can give what you'd like to be done, how it'll benefit your church, how it'll simplify your workflow. You can mention all those things in the ticket, and we'll pass your feedback on verbatim to the programmers, to the managers, to the developers, so that they can see exactly what you'd like to see changed in the software or enhanced inside the software. So absolutely. You're welcome, Jerry Lynn. Okay. Okay, well, that looks like that's all the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. For Jordan Bogart, this is Rod Kiles. We are signing off.